You're listening to the SoleStrategies podcast with your hosts Z. Cohen Sanchez and Chris Abramson. If you're running for office or thinking about it, you're in the right place. We hope you enjoy the latest episode and thanks for tuning in.
Hi, everybody. Super excited to be here. We're going to wait a couple of seconds like we always do just to get some people rolling in. But I braved the smoke to come out here and talk to you guys tonight because we have a topic that is really, really important that we want to share, and we figured that the best way to do that is to be together. So this is Chris. Chris is one of our call time managers. He's super awesome. He's got a ton of experience. Chris and I come from sort of different backgrounds that really complement each other, I think. Chris has done a lot of work in like the nonprofit world. He's done a lot of work boots on the ground canvassing, but fundraising doing that, which is super interesting. We're going to talk a bit about that tonight. Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Z. Boots on the ground, door knocking, standing on the street corner, speaking passionately about what needs to happen is kind of my forte. I've worked with most of the big canvassing organizations, but also done some political work too. I've worked with drug policy reform issues for candidacies, congressional campaigns, and I think really what I want to bring to the table is the ability to put money in the hands of the progressives and the candidates that need it so that they can make the changes that they need to.
That's awesome. And I'm just going to be sharing this to my page just while we're waiting to get some folks on.
Yeah, definitely.
But the reason why we wanted to be together tonight to talk about this and why we think it's so important, particularly now, is because we're literally living in a climate crisis. And for anybody who doesn't think that, just take a drive down to Oregon and take a look at our air quality right now. We're reaching in the 500s, which is beyond hazardous. It's literally beyond the hazardous scale. And so there is no better time if you're a progressive to be running for office. This is it. This is really, I don't know how else to say it without sounding crude, but this is literally it. I mean, you can keep talking yourself out of it and waiting, but at some point there's gonna be no waiting to do anymore. And so what Chris and I really specialize in and what we really love is making sure that candidates get the money that they need to win real races and to run really competitive races. We don't sort of run the races where like you get your name on the ballot, you get like 900 votes in a congressional race, you pay $500 to do that. We don't run those kinds of races. We run races where we oust long-term incumbents. That's our bread and butter. That's what we do. And a lot of people sort of come to us and say that they want to do that, but they don't want to invest in themselves, and they don't want to invest in their community to be able to do that. And so some of the things we're going to talk about tonight are, why are you not raising money? So you might be thinking that you're doing everything right, and you might be doing a lot of things right, but the reality is that if you don't have the experience and you don't know what you're doing, a lot of the things that you think you're doing right, you could very well not be doing right. And so we're just going to sort of tackle a couple of those things and talk about what are some things that you should be looking at. So Chris, you want to sort of get us started?
Yeah, I can get the ball rolling down the hill here.
Nice.
So one of the first things I think is really important and I've encountered a lot of candidates and campaigns and movements that don't believe funding is important or they're scared of money. So this would be a candidate who just doesn't see the value in raising a lot of money. It might not be a thing they think that they need. They think they can take other avenues, or they just don't know how to go out there and raise that first $10,000, turn that $10,000 into 50, turn that 50 into 250. And I think that that can be really short-sighted. The fact of the matter is likelihood is the incumbent that you're working to unseat probably has corporate sponsorships. They probably have benefactors. They probably have people that are funding them to the tune of millions of dollars if they need to. And in our current political climate, it's really easy for an incumbent to be able to make promises, to be able to get that funding and to be able to secure that support. So if you're up against that, you're going to need to out-fundraise them. If your opponents are taking those corporate sponsorships, if they're doing the kind of work, through, working with lobbyists or think tanks or trusts or any of the kind of financial engines that can put out the billboards, put out the yard signs, move the campaign ideology forward, move the message forward, then you're going to have to out-fundraise those people. The cool thing is we also live in a world right now where Bernie Sanders out-fundraised every other candidate, showed that there's enough power in the grassroots that when you can tap into it, you're not going to be left empty-handed. In fact, there's this huge surge of people right now that want to get involved. Normal folks, $20, $50 at a time. It's really just about knowing how to go and get it.
Yeah, I think that it's sort of interesting. I think that there's this sort of like taboo around money for everybody, right? There's always been like a taboo around money, but particularly for progressives. Like it's one of those things that, when we get on the phone with the candidate, they want to talk about their platform, they want to talk about their volunteers, they want to talk about their ground game, they want to talk about everything except for how much money they've raised. I don't know if that's been your experience. I mean, from when we've worked together, that I think that has been. Yeah. But it's really interesting, and I think that one of the things that we've really got to sort of have a mind shift in, particularly in the progressive movement, is how we think about money and our relationship to money. So you're going to hear that Chris and I talk about this a lot. Whether you're working with us one-on-one or whether it's in our lives, we're going to talk a lot about money mindset because it matters and it makes a huge, huge difference in your fundraising. And you will see the shift for sure. But I think really sort of, at least the beginning stages, what I think that really needs to happen amongst the progressive movement and amongst progressives is that we need to all have a mind shift. And that's going to start on the individual level and it's going to move collectively. But if we're going to win seats and we're really going to run competitive races, particularly people that are running, outside of the Democratic Party, I think that that's even more difficult. And we've sort of touched on that a little bit, and I think that we'll probably touch on that more as we do these lives. But even running within the outside of the Democratic Party, you are going to be forced to raise a lot of money. And so in order to do that, you're going to have a money mind shift in the way that you think about money. Yeah. And so saying that, progressives don't have money, there's no money to be made, there's no money to be raised is not going to help you and it's not going to help anyone. And it's not true. It's literally, if we're just looking at straight facts, Bernie Sanders wouldn't have outraised the entire Democratic field if that were true. And so we're here to tell you that no, that is not true, that there is money to be made. There are people out there, but you're reaching the wrong people with the wrong message. So that's just what I wanted to add into that.
Another point that I just kind of thought of is like getting inside the mind of a donor. This is really important because I think a lot of the stigma around fundraising and money comes from like people think of themselves being approached by a canvasser or being approached by a political person and how much they hate that experience. Yep. So then they're like, I don't want to be the person who's responsible for like all of these annoying people like flagging people down. When in reality, the actual outcome of someone giving and donating to a cause that they can get behind is that they feel like they've taken action. And there's like this prefrontal neocortex kind of like I agree with the issue. Let's say it's like healthcare for all. Like people want healthcare for all. They agree that the numbers work out, the math works out, and it's a good decision. And that's a frontal lobe. That's a neocortex decision that says logically this makes sense. But when people take action for an issue that they stand behind, when you approach them as a candidate and say, look, we need healthcare for all right now with COVID going on, with wildfires going on, with everything that's going on, we need to be able to take care of people with healthcare that they can actually feel is accessible to them and isn't going to put them in debt forever. So what I'm asking you to do is give today and take action, take a stand that surpasses their neocortex and accesses their limbic system. So they feel emotionally connected to this issue now. And instead of just giving one time or in logic agreeing with the issue, what ends up happening is this issue is now their issue. And one of the best things that we can do, I think one of the best ways that we can shift that mindset of being afraid of money or afraid of canvassers is to really understand the mind of the donor and how good it feels to give and how empowering that is on a mass scale. Even if I would far rather change the world by taking $20 from 1 million people than $1 million from one person.
Totally. I think that's true. And I think like if you guys are sort of like, I don't know if I buy that. I mean, think about a time that you've given to something. And maybe it wasn't money. Maybe it was something else. Maybe you don't donate, and that's fine. But think about a time that maybe you gave like a gift to somebody, or that you felt a part of something. Maybe you volunteered for your student organization, and that like made you feel really good. It's the same thing. We're still tapping into that front neocortex frontal lobe, right? And so, if you just look at your own example, you'll be able to sort of debunk that myth, right? Because I'm sure that at some point in your life that you felt good giving to somebody else, whether that was money or whether that was something else, just depending on your resources. I know for myself that when I gave money to Bernie for the first time, I felt really good about that. I was really excited about that. To the point where I wanted to continue to give, which I think we're going to touch on in some of our lives moving forward, about the importance of making your donors reoccurring donors and continuing. And there is a way to do that. There is a science behind that, and we will talk about that. But definitely want to sort of stick on topic. So
yeah,
what's the next one? So the first one that we covered was
don't believe that funding is important.
Don't believe that. Yeah.
And it is. It definitely is.
It is.
We're just gonna let you know. If you want to run a successful campaign and you want to be a winner, you're going to have to raise the funds that it takes to do that, and you're gonna have to change public perspective while you do it. It's gonna have to be skillful and intentional. Fact of the matter is, if you're just trying to try, then maybe fundraising won't be important for you. But if you want to win, then you're going to have to beat your opposition. You're going to have to beat an incumbent. You're going to have to out-message the people who just want to stop you. If you really want progress to happen, you've got to actually put gas in the tank and make the car go. So yes, some people
definitely don't come to us if you just want to try.
Right.
We want people that are in this to win their races, and I think that that's sort of there's a big difference there, right? Because and it's also your own thinking and your own mindset. Like if you go into a race and you truly want to win the race, then you are going to realize that funding matters, full stop, period, right? It's sort of like, you have to go into things knowing some basic facts in order to be successful at this game. And this sort of reminds me of the time like when I was in college, my evolution teacher said, so many of you guys believe in so many different things, and that's great. You guys all have your separate religions, but for the purpose of this classroom, evolution is fact. And we're not going to get beyond any other part of the education if you don't believe that evolution is fact. And that's the same thing with funding as well, right? If you don't think funding is important, then the rest of the education isn't going to matter because you haven't accepted the basic fact, which is that funding is critical to your operation. So
yeah,
glad that we covered that because I think that that's a huge one.
Totally. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is your campaign might not be raising any money because you don't have the skills that it takes to go out and raise money. It might not be something that you've ever done before. You might not understand that there is a very comprehensive science around how to raise money. You may not have really gone out and actually put your boots on the ground to go do this yet. So that's kind of the next thing is, do you have the skills?
And there's no shame in that game, right? Like if you don't have the skill set to be able to raise money, like let me just tell you now, you and many, many, many other people. You are not the only one. In fact, if you were the only one, then progressives would be winning their seats all over the country, right? But they're not. And so there is no shame in asking for help. There is no shame in training. In fact, that is exactly what you need to do. That is your next critical step, is to, if you don't know what you're doing, and you need to be really honest with yourself and having that conversation with yourself. Do I know what I'm doing? Do I actually have the structure? Do I know how to ask people for money? Is my pitch good? Is my messaging good? These are all things that you need to really sort of think about.
A good parameter too to know, I mean, if you haven't actually raised $10,000, then you might not have the skills to actually do it.
That's true.
If you have done it before, that's a really good baseline to understand. But if you haven't actually got there yet, it's likely that you need training on skills. Even the best fundraisers in the world and some of the top people in the game still train their skills all the time because the skills are constantly changing. What works in one place doesn't work in another place. Training on fundraising skills and actually having the right messaging and being able to actually go out there and do it is something that takes constant refinement. So,
and the world's changed, right? So it's like, I mean, even like the best fundraisers 10 years ago didn't know social media targeting. They didn't know how to run ads. So, I mean, even if you have been in this game for a really long time, or what you think has been a long time, things change, adapt, and shift. And so being able to change, adapt, and shift is really, really important.
Critical.
Yeah.
Totally.
Definitely.
And I'd like to throw out too, if this is what SoleStrategies is all about. If you are thinking to yourself, like, I haven't really done much fundraising, this isn't really in my wheelhouse, and that's why my campaign's not making money. We're literally here to come in and make it rain. Like, we're here to come in and make it happen for you. This is like why we exist. It's something that we have a very proven track record on being able to do. There's not really an issue that's out there that we can't work on. It's no matter what your focus is. Personally, I've worked on, the Abolish ICE movement, did fantastically. There's so much funding out there to help abolish ICE. If one of your issues is, universal health care, there's so much funding out there for people that want to see this happen. So really, like, no matter what your particular campaign issue is driven around, and your candidacy is about, we can go out and access, why people think that's really important, and make sure that they take action and get involved today.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
And I think I think I mentioned this in every live, but just to sort of recap, is that even if you're not a candidate, even if you're running a small nonprofit, we had a couple people reach out to us the other day that were like, oh, we're trying to raise money for a homelessness fund out here in Oregon. That's amazing. Those are the type of projects that we want to help you with. Don't hesitate. We talk about candidates a lot because that's really our bread and butter, but we work on ballot measures. We work on small nonprofit organizations. We work with unions, all types of folks. So if you need to raise money, if that's your pain point right now, if that's something that you're struggling with, if that's something that's keeping you up at night, you should contact us.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So the next thing we have here is your campaign isn't raising money because you haven't put in the work. Now,
cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that, I can't stress enough how much it is a game of attrition, and it really comes down to how many doors have you knocked on, how many conversations have you had. Some of the best fundraisers in the world, if you're cold calling people, you're cold reaching out to folks, you might at best maintain a 10 to 15% success rate, meaning that like 90 to 85% of people are just saying no to you. So the fact of the matter is, like, if you're going to process through all of the people that, don't care about politics, like they're just not ever going to donate to anybody because they don't care, process with the people that are literally your opposition. Like if they're going to, support a candidate that is sitting opposite of you and they've already made up that decision, well, they're not going to fund you. Or maybe they will, but the likelihood is it's not worth your time to sit and convince those people all day. What we're looking for is those group of people that have the money, they're ready to give, they're politically clued in, and they support the issues that you support. They're out there and they can become lifelong supporters for you, but we actually have to go out and do the work to find them.
You can't just sit back. And this is one of the things that we talk about a lot is scheduling and how important it is to schedule your time, right? Because you could say to yourself at the beginning of the week, I'm going to do 40 hours of call time. I hear this all the time. I'm going to do 40 hours of call time. And my next follow-up question for every single person that tells me it is, okay, when? Like, what days are you going to do that call time? What hours are you going to do that call time? What things are you going to take out of your schedule so that you're able to complete that? And that's when a lot of people are like, well, I don't know. And it's like, well, then I can almost assure you from this point that you're not going to do that 40 hours of call time.
Right.
I mean, it's really as simple as that. So it's really about being committed, but then it's also about scheduling your time and scheduling your time effectively. We have a lot of candidates that come to us and tell us, I can't do call time because I'm prioritizing X, Y, and Z. And if you're not prioritizing fundraising, I don't know what to tell you, because you're not going to be able to do any of the other things that you need to do if you don't prioritize that. So if you're trying to prioritize instead of fundraising, if you're trying to prioritize hiring your team, if you're trying to prioritize getting interns, if you're trying to prioritize getting volunteers, if you're trying to prioritize any of those things over fundraising, is at the beginning, right? I mean, once you fundraise, $500,000, we might have a very different conversation. But if you have $0 or you have $10,000 or anything less than that, and you are prioritizing other things, then you're off the track, and we're here to get you back on the track and to help you get up and going.
That's right, yeah. And keep in mind too that I think I personally have encountered, and this isn't so common in the left and in progressive movements, but it's a thing where a candidate, the leader of a nonprofit, a ballot initiative chief petitioner will say, well, it's not really my job to go out and fundraise. Like that should be left to people who are like entry level. That should be left to like kind of the peasants. Like it's not up to me to be able to do that. Fact of the matter is, if you're not in touch with what is happening in your fundraising programs, if you're not able to go out there and bottom line it, then it's going to be really, really difficult for you. It's going to be, your metrics for success are never going to be something that you're going to fully understand. So you can hire out a third party to do that. If you have if you're sitting there with $10,000 right now and you need to turn that $10,000 into $75,000 or $100,000, you can absolutely just pay us to do it for you. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
But we will take care of that, and but if you're sitting there with zero money or very little amounts of money, it's something that you're going to need to know how to do, and it does take the time and going out there and just learning it and training, failing and like falling off the horse and getting back up again. That's totally a part of it. Yeah.
And the best fundraiser is the candidate.
Yeah.
We always tell them this, and a lot of people don't agree. But it's true. I mean, the metrics show us. As I've said multiple times, and I will continue to bring this home, is that we are data focused. I love statistics. I love data. I probably wouldn't even be in politics if I didn't love data as much as I do. And so everything that we do is based on data. And the data shows us that candidates are the best fundraisers for themselves. So as Chris said, you can hire out a third party. You can do those things. But is it going to be a slower process for you? Is it going to be as successful for you? Is that third party going to want to stay with you throughout the entire time? Are they going to want to be there with you for your run after you win your election? I mean, these are all sort of things that are up in the air. The person that you want to rely on the most is yourself, and getting the skills that you need to be able to not just do this once, but continue to do this. Because the reality is that if you are going after a congressional seat right now, if you are going after a state senate seat, if you're going after city council, whatever you're going after, there is going to be something that's going to bring you to the next seat, right? So if you're running for Congress, very likely you are thinking at some point in the future that you're going to run for Senate, or you're going to run for president, or whatever that you want to do, right? And so you're not going to be able to do that if you don't have the skills behind you to be able to do that. Really that simple.
Honestly, too, yeah, what you said really brought into mind that, most of politicking, like most of public speaking, is essentially the same as fundraising. Like, if you are a really good fundraiser, you're going to be really good when the news media gets in front of your face. You're going to be really good in, social interactions, like, you're practicing skills and, messaging skills and public speaking skills that are going to carry all over across the board.
Totally.
If you can, I firmly believe that if you can knock on a door or, call someone on the phone and get them involved in your campaign right now, then you can definitely go on TV, you can definitely go on stage and get thousands of people on board with you right now too.
Right.
It's much easier to practice in front of one person at a time rather than mess up in front of thousands of people.
I've told this to many candidates too, because a lot of candidates hire debate prep people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's like a whole thing. I mean, I had no idea that was like, there's a whole sort of, array of different services out there for learning how to debate.
Yep.
And I think that's interesting and that's great. But what Chris was saying is that he's very right? I mean, if you know how to fundraise effectively, you're going to know how to debate effectively. Now, that might not mean that you know every single international issue, right? You're going to probably have to hire people to help you do those sorts of things. But in terms of convincing your audience, that is something that you are going to be able to carry over into debates, be able to carry over into your canvassing conversations, and all of this really matters and we've talked a little bit about direct impact and the effect of direct impact and how powerful direct impact is. And this is one of the best things that you can do for direct impact to get your donors to continue to donate to you, is to be able to have these convincing conversations, but also truly mean it. I mean, not just sort of like, you know, we don't sort of teach people to fake it, right? Like, we really sort of get down to the nitty-gritty of it and figure out what is important to you and how can we display that to your audience and make it digestible and make it something that people want to give to. And by the way, I see some people on, so if you're on, throw in the comments where you're watching from, why you're watching, if you are thinking about raising money, if you're having trouble raising money, what you're having trouble with. Yeah, just sort of throw it out there.
Are you able to see the comments?
I'll check, as you're getting to the next point.
Cool, sweet. Yeah, so we're jumping right along here. Really appreciate everybody just kind of tuning in, and definitely want to suggest go smash that follow button on SoleStrategies. You know, that's going to just let you know when we're live and when we're doing skill shares, when we're, you know, talking about the different things that we're going to be talking about, taking you through kind of the introductory stuff. Like, our lives are really, you know, the tip of the iceberg. It's like, this is the introductory stuff that's going to give you, you know, some free tips and tricks, some really tasty tidbits that you're going to see are really important and start to inform you about what directions you need to take. But the next step would be, you know, messaging us, contacting us, and really, you know, taking that next step so that you can be fundraising, so your campaign can be making money, and that's really what.
Oh, sorry, we cut out for a second there. I see some comments in here. So I see Kylie says that she is watching from Melbourne, Australia, which is super cool. Love it. I actually know Kylie through some organizing work. She's really awesome, progressive. She says that council elections are up for grabs in Melbourne at the moment. Hot. Jump on it, girl. Kylie would be great at running for a seat like that. And I think that that's sort of an important point to make, guys, as well, is that if you're the type of person that you've never run for office before, and you just sort of see yourself as like, you know, a regular sort of working class person, you are the type of person that we want to work with. We don't want to work with somebody sitting up in their penthouse making millions of dollars. We're not interested in working, you know, with those folks. We're interested in working with working class people like you guys. I mean, this is really why we do this. We don't do this because we need to make money. You know, we have other sources of income. We don't need to do that. We're doing this because we want to help we want to help progressives win their seats. And the way to do that is really tapping into the working class movement right now.
Absolutely.
Heather said, great info. Thanks for sharing. Awesome. Heather, let us know if you're thinking about running and what you're running for. Do we have any other points we wanted to bring up?
Yeah. So the next one would be, and I've come in contact with this quite a few times, which, you know, it's a little bit silly, but believe it or not, it's something that I've seen actually quite a bit. People think that they can win an election, get an initiative petition through, change a law, run their nonprofit completely on the back of volunteers. I see a few, just with, just that alone can be a little bit problematic, because it's like, so basically you're wanting all of the labor for your campaign to be done for free.
That's usually problematic. Just say it. Call it what it is.
Kind of problematic, yeah.
I mean, I think we gotta be honest, right? I mean, you're running a progressive campaign. You want to pay people, what, $15 an hour? I mean, really, you should be paying more than $15 an hour at this point, just because if you're living in a big city, $15 is not a livable wage.
Right.
And then you want, and you know, we are not saying that volunteers are a bad thing. In fact,
Sure.
Some of the best people-powered movements are built on volunteers, but that comes much, much, much later.
Right.
Much later.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's also never a reason to be like, well, I don't need money because I have all of these volunteers. The volunteer attrition rate is going to be abysmal no matter what. If you have 1 million volunteers, the first 100,000 are going to quit in the first week. The next 100,000 are going to quit in the second week. By the 5th or 6th week, you're going to have 5 volunteers.
Yeah.
If you have 10 volunteers, you're going to lose them quickly. You're going to have to be constantly in this cycle of recruiting and burning through volunteers, which will end up costing you more money than just paying people.
Yes.
So that's one thing. So the attrition rate is just like, you might as well get long-term people in who know what they're doing, who can deliver your messaging correctly. You might as well have people that are very confident in what they do and can really back, what they're involved in. Volunteers often are motivated, but that motivation disappears really, really quickly. You got to pay your bills, and they're going to also be able to give a smaller amount of time. Your average person doesn't volunteer 40 hours a week. They are going to need to pay their bill 40 hours a week, and then maybe fit in 2 or 3 hours of volunteering as well. So if you have that cadre and that really dedicated group of inner circle people that are, elite, like they're trained, they know how to give the messaging, they can debate anybody, anytime, with any question, they're going to be well paid. And that's how you're going to attract people that have the skill and the talent, is by fundraising efficiently and being able to pay staff that make sense, that are going to do the job that's going to make you to win, that's going to make it able so you can win.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things about volunteers. I think we should probably just do a whole live on volunteers, because honestly, there's a lot to sort of dig into. But just a couple things, because we're touching on it. One is that you never want to take advantage of your volunteers' time. You take advantage of your volunteers' time, and I'm going to be really frank with you guys. What that sort of looks like is bringing on a free communications person. I mean, it's really bringing on a volunteer campaign manager, or a campaign manager that is going to be paid when you start making money. That is not the way to run an effective campaign. That is a way to really drive your campaign into the ground. And to actually, what ends up happening is you end up getting volunteers so unmotivated to work on your campaign that when you do get to the later stage where you need your volunteers, it's really hard, because you sort of ruin that reputation.
You burnt them out.
Yeah, and you've burnt them out, right. And so what you really want to be sort of focused on, what your goal really needs to be, is that if you are, for example, you're running for Congress in 2022 and you are starting now, that's what you should be doing. You should be starting now. You should be fundraising now for at least your first 6 months. You want to start thinking about volunteers about 6 to 8 months before. Honestly, 8 should be the longest amount of time that you have volunteers for. That's a long time to have volunteers. Honestly, some of the most successful campaigns that I've ever worked with had volunteers in the last 2 months of the campaign. And when I mean volunteer, I mean a huge volunteer program, right? And that's sort of the time that there's a couple of reasons why you want to wait that long, but one of the main reasons why you want to wait that long is because that's the time that you want to have street visibility, right? That is the critical time. The reality is that a lot of people that sort of are thinking about running, that work in politics, people like us, they think people just think about these things all the time, right? And the reality is that the average person does not, okay? So what you really want to sort of focus on is, when do people start talking about the election? A couple weeks before the election, if that, right? Even really a couple days before the election.
Totally.
And so that's the time that you really want to get those volunteers sort of out on the ground, and it's exciting for them. And you really want to sort of think about, what is exciting for my volunteers? Not just always thinking what is good for me, but what is going to be good for them. And they're going to be super motivated and super excited if they see that you have a paid canvassing program out, that you have other people out there doing things, that you are in debates, that things are actually happening. If you start to use your volunteers before you have any type of infrastructure, again, you're just going to burn them out. And you're not going to help yourself, and you're not going to help them. So
I've definitely seen a few candidates, chief petitioners, and various people participating in politics literally just cycle through volunteers forever until they actually had amassed a giant group of people with pitchforks behind them.
Yeah, that happens.
That definitely happens.
We've worked on campaigns together and separately where we've seen that happen before. And it's really,
and it didn't have to happen.
And it didn't have to, right? And and that's the sort of the sad part, right? Is that you have these really motivated people. The best thing that you can do is say, we love your motivation. We love working with you. I mean, even if they want to, if they're really, really motivated, maybe you let them work like half an hour a week on the campaign or something, right? You pay them a couple bucks, whatever. But you don't want them out knocking doors a year and a half before your campaign. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. It's just what that's going to do is it's just going to end up hurting you in the end, and we don't want that to happen to you. We want you to have a successful campaign.
Also, it just goes like full circle back. Volunteers want to work on successful campaigns.
Right.
So if your campaign has a lot of money and you're fundraising very well, and there's all these things going on where there's yard signs that they're putting out, there's conversations that they're having in the community. There's, protests that you're speaking out at that they're involved in. All of these different things that winning campaigns have motivate and attract volunteers.
Right.
So it just cycles right back to like the more you invest in yourself, the more you get a good fundraising platform down, the more you pay your staff appropriately and have high qualified staff that do a good job, the more volunteers you're going to attract too.
Yeah, and your staff, honestly, once you get to the point where you've raised that initial money and that you can bring on a really qualified and good staff, and by the way, if you don't know how to do that, we're happy to help you do that. We have networks of folks all over the country of people that have run incredible campaigns and are happy to, we could say loaned out to you. We don't own them, but that would be happy to help you. But the reality is that, if you don't raise that initial money and you don't get that qualified staff, that you're not going to have the people behind you that are going to be able to motivate the volunteers the way that you need them to be motivated, right? So I sort of see this a lot too, is that like people will raise a little bit of money, and as soon as they raise a little bit of money, they're like, oh, I want to hire a staff. And it's like, that isn't exactly the first thing you need to do. And when you work with us, we'll sort of take you through the steps of what that looks like and why you don't want to hire staff immediately. But when you do get to that point, when you do raise, $50,000, $100,000, when you're in that realm where you can safely say, I can pay this person for X amount of time, and you know that, we've sort of given you that advice, that that's good advice to sort of move forward with the staff, you will have people that will motivate volunteers. So don't worry about, I see a lot of candidates waste so much time on this initially. They're like, how am I going to motivate volunteers? And I'm like, you are so far ahead of where you need to be right now. And I think that's great. The fact that you're thinking about that, the fact that you care about that matters, and it's wonderful. But don't get sort of caught up in the minutiae of that, because all that will do is it'll delay your success. And when you do need that to happen, it won't happen. That's
Agreed.
really what it comes down to, I think.
Agreed, 100%. Yeah. So the next thing that we were looking up here is too much on your plate. This has also been, for me, a very, very common thing that I see with candidates, chief petitioners, is that there's just so much to do. If changing the world through the elected offices and through the legislature were easy, probably the world would look a lot better than it does right now. It's hard work. And fact of the matter is, it's going to put a ton on your plate, especially during the running, let alone while you sit in your seat. But for sure, the race itself can be daunting for a lot of people, and fundraising can tend to take a backseat to other things like making public appearances, again, working with volunteers.
Public appearances, that's a huge one. Everybody wants to make a public appearance before they've raised money. And I get it. I mean, it's, when you're having campaigns before, you see what other candidates do, right? And you want to copy that, right? Like, I mean, that sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
It's hard for me because I've never been a candidate, because I haven't been a candidate and I haven't sort of wanted that. But now sort of like thinking about it sort of makes sense of like, okay, well, if other candidates are doing this thing, like if they're at public speaking, I should be public speaking. And again, it's really the cart before the horse. And, it's, once you get into it and you raise some money, my God, public speak. I mean, and we will help you do that. And we will help you get the connections that you need to be able to do that a lot. But before you sort of have raised that initial money, it's not really worth your time.
Yeah.
Really,
I think I could go as far as to say nothing. If you haven't raised your first $10,000 and you don't have a very solid plan on how to do that, really nothing is more important than doing that.
No, nothing. Like literally nothing is more important than doing that. I can't think of anything that would sort of outweigh that.
I mean, you should know your positions on stuff. You should be in touch with your community, but I just kind of expect...
You don't even need all your positions, I think, lined out, right?
That's a fair point.
I mean, like
you could pick a couple popular ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of people sort of get stuck in that too, of like, well, I need a full website and I need my full platforms. It's like, you really don't. What you need is you need a landing page, you need some basic information, and you need a place for them to be able to donate to you. And you need to sign up to learn how to actually fundraise. That's what you need. There's some actually really good questions. So Heather asked us, she said, I feel that many folks that want to start a campaign don't have any startup money. A huge part of the inequality in politics and nonprofits is that so many people who come from the struggles they want to advocate for don't have any money to even start a campaign. What can people do? What can you do to help people in this position? Do you help people campaign to campaign? I like that. Do you help people campaign to campaign?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly what we do. Mm-hmm. So I think that let's sort of tackle the first part of this. And the first part is that, the people that we want to run might not have the initial money to start, right? And that's definitely a fear. But what we do is we make our services so affordable that literally anybody can do it, right? And so we have payment plans for folks, not certain folks, for everybody that needs help with that. We do whatever we can to make sure that you have the funds to be able to start. We don't want money to get in your way. If money is something that you feel is it's scary for you right now, we totally get it. I mean, we're literally living in coronavirus, like we are living in some crazy times. And so if money is something that you are fearful of, don't be. Like, come to us and talk to us about it, because there is so many things that we can do to help you out, to get you started. We're not going to turn you down. We're not going to turn you away. If we see a good candidate in you, if you're the type of person that's coachable, if you're the type of person that's committed, the last thing we want to do is see you walk away because you can't afford it. That's not why we're here. In fact, we're here for the opposite reason. So if we were turning folks away because they couldn't put a couple $1,000s in our lap, we wouldn't be doing what we do, right? We would be a totally different business model, I think.
I also, want to just dispel the myth that you have to have a bunch of money to play. It's a lot easier if you are independently wealthy.
Hell yeah.
But you're also, I can guarantee that every independently wealthy chief petitioner, candidate, nonprofit that I've worked with wastes so much. They're incredibly wasteful. And every candidate that I've ever talked to that was, started off with a shoestring budget or worked a normal job, knew how to take that dollar and stretch it. One time, me and a friend of mine had a really good political idea that we could, push an initiative. We literally filed for the political action committee for $50. We took another $50 out of our paycheck for our day jobs at the time and printed out, donation forms and fact sheets. Went out there with clipboards, and we were bringing in like $700 a day within 3 days.
Alexandria had no money at all. Literally, I mean, I had friends, like I wasn't on the campaign in those early days, but I had friends that were, and money was a huge concern, and they were still able to find the funds that they needed to at least get started. And I think that this happens with a lot of candidates, right? I think that there are so many candidates that this is a really honest fear for them, that they don't have the money to start. And I think that that's something that, I think that that is true, right? I mean, if you are independently wealthy, I think that, as you said, that helps. But that doesn't run your campaign, right? Like, because you would need to have an excess of $2 million and maybe there are some people that do that, but very little, right? I mean, most of the people that we see that are quote unquote independently wealthy say to us, I want to throw, $200,000 behind my campaign.
It's not enough.
And it's just not enough, right? And what happens is then that money ends up fizzling out. They don't have the skills that they need to actually raise any money, and so they continue to invest in it, knowing that, and I've actually had conversations with candidates like this before. I worked with a candidate very recently that invested, I think it was right around $200,000 into her congressional campaign, and I told her it was going to fail miserably, and it failed miserably. And the reason why is because, again, there weren't the skills there to be able to fundraise. And so what ends up happening is you just sort of run out of those funds, and it's not enough to sort of continue. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
So being independently wealthy, I mean, I think when people think of independently wealthy, they're sort of thinking of, this sort of, mom that works, has her own business and sort of brings in like $1 million a year. That's not the type of independently wealthy you need to be to really, you know, run a real campaign.
Right.
But if you have $2 million,
right,
come talk to us. We'll help you out.
Sure.
Heather asked, what does starting a campaign with your help look like? What are all the steps? So, Heather, that's a really good question. So, I don't want to sort of make it short, but I think it really depends on what you're running for. That's sort of the first step. So when we, and also we should put out there, we do not work with everybody. We turn down people all the time because, again, there are certain things that we sort of see, at least initially, that are red flags to us, and that make us sort of stop in our tracks and say, this isn't the type of person that we want to work with, and we want to have the ability to say that we don't want to work with that person.
Yeah.
It's really important to us. We don't want to work on 1,000 losing campaigns. That's not what we want to do. And we don't want to do that to the person that's working with us either. If we don't think that you can get results, we're not going to ask you to spend money on something that you're not going to get results for. And so if you come to us and you say, you know, I would like to run for the state senate against this like really entrenched incumbent, and for example, you're in California, most likely we're going to tell you that that's not going to work, because in California there are certain rules and regulations where you can't fundraise until you're 3 months before the election, sometimes even a little bit less than that. And so if you don't have any fundraising experience, that's going to be next to impossible for you to be able to raise $200,000 or $300,000 to be able to win that seat. And so what we do initially is that we set up a discovery call with you. So, you know, we do free 15-minute phone calls where you can talk to us about the seat that you're thinking about running for. We'll give you our honest opinion on whether we think that that is an attainable seat. A lot of us, especially on our staff, I think, have a lot of knowledge around a lot of the rules and regulations already, but not everything. And so if you are looking to run for a specific seat that we don't have the information on, that we need to look up, we'll tell you that. We'll let you know, and then we'll schedule a follow-up call with you once somebody on our staff has dug into that information. And from there, we will tell you what we think that you need to be able to get started. So that looks different for everybody. Some people, you know, most people, if you have not fundraised at all before and you're progressive, most people we would say to start on our month package. And what that includes is that you are working with us for 8 hours in the month, but we're working with you very, very closely throughout that entire month. And we're getting you started. We're truly training you. We're digging in. We're getting you the results. So yeah, it really depends on what you're running for, is the short answer.
Different people have different needs too.
Yes, totally.
Some people might, you know, need, you know, really good, like maybe they have their own nonprofit that they've been fundraising for 10 years. Mm-hmm. So their skills on fundraising are actually pretty good. But they really don't know how to do social media. They really don't know how to craft the kind of message that, you know, maybe that's their specific focus on that nonprofit's issues, but they don't really know all these other issues that might be really important. So I can imagine, you know, really just helping that person like build a narrative and really push it. Maybe somebody has really good experience in working with all these issues, but has never fundraised before. So different people have different needs too, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that we don't want to be the type of organization that is a one-size-fits-all, because we know that that's not the reality. The reality is that different people have different needs, and we don't want to quote-unquote sell you something that is not going to work. We wouldn't be doing this if we didn't think that our methods worked. And so just depending on where you're at in your journey is going to tell us a lot about where we think that you need to be. If you were coming to us and you were saying, you know, I want to run for Congress in 2020, we would tell you no, because it's too late, right? But if you were, you know, you'd already raised a couple $100,000 and you want to turn that couple $100,000 into more money, then that's, you know, again, a very sort of different conversation, and we would have you starting at a different point. So the short answer is, if you are looking to run for office, or you're currently running for office, or you are currently running a nonprofit, or thinking about it, to just reach out to us and book that 15-minute intro call, because we'll be able to get a lot of information from you that will be able to tell us where exactly you need to get started.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm also not a big believer of just like, I hate it when I sort of come to somebody for help with something and they just like give me like a laundry list of things and I'm like, but what is going to help me right now? You know what I mean? My lungs are hurting. Like, you know, what am I supposed to do to make my lungs not hurt? Right? I'm just thinking about that because it's smoke outside. But it's reality, and that is true.
It's pressing.
Lungs hurt. But that is the reality. Is that we want to be able to tell you how to reach your goal. We don't want to just tell you how to spend useless money. That's not going to get you anything. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Any other questions that we're talking about?
Let me see. Not that I can see right now.
Cool.
Do we have any other points to touch on? This is
Okay.
the last call for questions. If anybody's got questions.
So we're reaching a little bit about too much on your plate. I think, you know, just to touch base on that again, I want to just kind of summarize. I don't know if we went fully into it, but yeah, like running a congressional race, running to unseat an incumbent, starting up a nonprofit, running an initiative petition, changing a law. These things are difficult. By nature, if they were easy, we would have done them already, is kind of what I always say.
Yeah, that's real.
So, you know, facts of the matter is they're hard, and you're going to need a big plate, and you're going to need to dole out what's on your plate quite effectively. Fundraising often gets pushed to the side, and we started off that conversation by kind of saying like doing, you know, public appearances or different things like that. Legitimately, I just want to say like fundraising should be your entire plate at first.
If that's all you walk away with from this live, let it be that.
Yeah.
Like literally, if that's the only thing you heard us say, I would be very happy if you walk away with that information.
Yeah, you can attach an engine to really just wheels and make the thing make you go. You can have a multi-million-dollar hypercar body. If it doesn't have an engine in it, it's not going anywhere.
Exactly.
And your fundraising is going to be the engine. It's going to be what drives your campaign. So fact of the matter is, yeah, as far as like too much on your plate, you should be getting rid of every other thing, at least until you have the first $10,000, $25,000, $50,000. If you have that, then you can start adding things slowly into the plate. And I think that's a really good reason to work with us too. Not only can we help you get that first $10,000 and do your fundraising, we can also help you to mitigate you know, the damage that can come from how quickly things will start filling up on your plate. We can start to show you what really needs to take priority too, because we've run those kind of successful campaigns before, and we know how to do that. So
we come to we get candidates a lot that sort of overfill themselves at first, and that's definitely a concern, and that's something that is also something that's not unfixable. I think that a lot of the times, like we come to candidates and they're like, but I've already made all these commitments, I've already done all these things, so like I just can't stop. And the reality is that yes, you can. You absolutely can. And if you, again, if your goal is that you want to win, then you're going to have to listen to professional advice. And that's the best advice that we can give you, is that if you don't have funding and, you know, if you don't think that that's accurate, I mean, just look at the statistics. We don't have to talk you into it. Like literally just go look at all the progressives that won and have a look at how much they're bringing in. That's the reality.
that's the reality.
Yeah.
That's the way the cookie crumbles. So the last one here was don't understand canvassing. So don't understand the power of, you know, going through from person to person, finding your supporters, being able to convert people that are on the fence, and getting people to take action right now. I personally believe that this is the single most important political tool that exists. We just aren't wired for, you know, phone calls. We're not wired for billboards. We're not wired for commercials. People engage with other people. When we can hear a voice, when we can see a facial expression, when we can attach an emotion to an issue, that's when we take action. That's what motivates people to do stuff. You may think that that you have the ability to change people's minds and hearts because, you know, you're just charismatic, or you would think that, you know, getting, say, you know, we'll take a hot button issue, getting police accountability is just an obvious issue that anyone should understand. But the fact of the matter is, lots of people just have never been asked about it. Believe it or not, there are a bunch of people out there for even the most obvious issues who they have just never had a conversation before. And when you call them on the phone and when you knock on their door, it literally might be the first time anyone has ever engaged them for even the most simplest thing, like have you voted? Like even voting at all might be a thing that they have never thought about. And the power in canvassing is not only do we raise the money that it takes to win, we bring in the cash that will drive the campaign. We also have the ability to inspire and change public perspective. So for every conversation that we have, that person is walking away thinking like, wow, I may not have donated, I may not agree with that person on all of these things, but that's the first thing. Now there's this question in my mind. Now I'm gonna have to go do my own research, and that's a thing you'll hear a lot as a canvasser is I'd like to go do my own research.
That's like the number one thing you hear.
It's like I
hear anyway.
It's a pretty common response when you ask someone to get involved today, make a donation, they're gonna go, hey, I just wanna go do my research. That's really, really valuable in of itself, because now that person's clicking a link on your campaign website. Now they're going to look at what your nonprofit does. Now they're going to look into an issue that they may never have thought about before. And so, just like the power of harnessing like canvassing, it is the single most important political tool that exists, period. And it's not like new. There's not a wheel to be reinvented. There's not like, it isn't just some kind of like abstract nebulous thing. It's a hard science. Fact of the matter is like canvassers have been out there knocking on doors, since like the 50s. It's an international thing. There's data sets that we can look at from all across the board in any state, in any city, on any issue. So fact of the matter is, one of the really cool things about working with SoleStrategies is we can bring the ability to canvass a neighborhood, make the calls that you need to make, talk to people and have those conversations in a way that raises the money that it takes to win and also changes public perspective on the issue. Literally vital to being able to make it.
Totally. And I mean, the only way that you're ever going to be able to get to run a canvassing program and get those big bucks that come from that is by doing the call time initially and working with us to learn how to do that call time. You're not going to be able to set up any type of canvassing program if you don't raise that initial money. And that's what we're here for, is that we want you to raise that initial money. We are invested in you raising that initial money so that you will continue to invest and continue to raise money at greater levels, right? And it's all about leveling. We're not going to ever tell you just start with canvassing, right? It's a really sort of big thing, and it's as Chris said, super effective tool, one of the best tools that we have. Whether that be door-to-door to get votes or whether that's door-to-door to raise money, we know that door-to-door wins the war. I mean, it really does. We have straight data that tells us that text messages, phone calls, social media, all those things are fine and they're all very well and good, but your contact rate is super, super, super low. And your ability to switch people's minds using those forums is even lower. So if you can get somebody face-to-face with you, or having them talk with a professional canvasser, having them talk with, at the end of your race, a very trained volunteer, which by the way doesn't come unless you have money, because you got to train them, then you will see the benefit of that. And we'll talk to you a lot when you first reach out to us too about like, what is your win number? How many votes do you actually need to get? All these sort of things that a lot of people don't think about initially, but the reason why we want you to think about them initially is because we want you to be able to set goals so that you can get that enormous, amazing field program that you're dreaming about, so that you can ultimately win on election night, right? I mean, that's the dream that you have, and that's the dream that we want to help you bring alive. That's the vision that we want to help.
So Z, I'm a viewer now, and we're gonna role play me being a viewer. So I love this conversation. I'm super stoked on all these things. I feel like I've isolated why my campaign's not making money. What do I do now?
Good question. So you're gonna call us. That's what you're gonna do. You're gonna call us, and so if you have not been to our website yet, please go to our website. It's sole.strategies.com. On our website, you're going to see something pop up initially that's really exciting. So if you put in your email when you sign up and you get onto our email list, which by the way, we are not spammers, we're not going to send you anything unless we think it's really important, then what will happen is you will get a free PDF email to you as soon as you put your email in. And that PDF is your starting checklist. So these are the 10 tips to raising your first $10,000. Now, the checklist is not going to be enough for you to just I mean, you can't just like bring your checklist, sit down and like start raising money, right? That's not how it works. But those are the fundamental things that we truly believe in here at SoleStrategies that we know are going to help you raise that money. Those are the things that we're going to continue to come back to when we're training you. So download that list, get that list sent to you. It is totally free, so there's no reason to not get it. And then the second thing that you want to do is you want to go in there and you want to book that free call. So as soon as you get to our webpage, there's a little link right there. It says book my free call now. It'll pop up our email and you can email us to book our free call, to book that free call. And what that will look like is either myself, Chris, or somebody else on our staff will be reaching out to you. And we will book a specific time to have that call. And from there, again, what we talked about earlier is that we'll discuss the seat that you're thinking about running in. You might not even know about a seat to run in yet. Like you might be just thinking about running, and that's totally fine. You don't even have to have a seat in mind. We are there to help you discover that. So all we're gonna need to get from you is some information about your background, where you are thinking about running, obviously like where you live, and just some more information about the things that you care about, your involvement in the community, all that sort of thing. So that's really what our discovery call is about. And again, it's free, so like why not? I mean, I love free stuff.
Cool. So let's do like a quick 15-second montage. Oh, I watched this video from SoleStrategies and gosh, my campaign's just not making enough money. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it, but that nice lady Z told me to call, and so here, I'm gonna call really quick, and yep, and now we're having a conversation with Z about what I need. All of a sudden, I'm making money, and you're helping to craft the narrative. Wow, there's volunteers now. Things are happening. Oh my gosh, and then balloons are falling, and you've won. So.
And by the way, we don't do this for everybody, but if you have never run for office before, and you're really, really nervous about that initial investment, if that's something that is just really scary to you, and we have identified that we think that you're a good fit for the program, we have certain deals where if you sign up the day of the discovery call, we do a money back guarantee, which means that if you don't raise the money that you spent on the program in the first month, we give it back to you. So it's literally free. If you raise the money, even better, because then we get paid, you get paid, everyone's paid. But you know, if that's something that you're really worried about, if your question in your mind right now is, will this work? And I think that that's a question that I have invested in my own education myself, and that's something that I thought about every time I sort of press the paying $5,000 for, and we did not cost that, by the way, but I've paid some insane amounts of money for education, and that's always the question that I come back to is this going to work for me? This works for other people, but will it work for me? And the answer is that you don't have any risk if you're going to get your money back. So that's something that, again, we do not offer for everybody, but if we believe that you are that we think that you are actually going to be able to do the work that it entails. If you sign up during the discovery call, then that is a benefit to the program. And it's seriously, why wouldn't you do that? It doesn't even make sense why you, are you going to continue to struggle just for the sake of struggling, or are you going to just throw in the towel and actually invest and see that money come in?
I hope people don't throw in the towel, because it's really, really important that motivated people that have the right mindset, that have the right skills, jump in and start really swinging when it comes to our legislature right now, because there's a lot of changes that need to be made that are so critical and so vital to the survival of a lot of people and our planet. And
so the survival of us, literally we can't breathe. It is real. The reality is real. If you're on the West Coast, you know what we're talking about, right? We need a Green New Deal. We need a Green New Deal now. And if you're a candidate that doesn't believe in the Green New Deal, then you also probably shouldn't work with us. There's two things that I think that we really look for. We don't care about your platform, to be honest. You can be a centrist Democrat, you can be an independent, you can be really whatever. We really don't care. But the two things that are sort of non-negotiables for us are caring about the environment. That might not be the Green New Deal specifically. Personally, we believe in that. But you need to have some sort of environmental protections in your platform. And the other thing that I think that is a non-negotiable, well, not that I think, that I know is a non-negotiable for us is Black Lives Matter. That is not something that we're going to negotiate. We're not going to negotiate with a candidate whether Black people or people of color in our country deserve equal rights. We're not interested in that. If you think that that is something, if that turns you off from working with us, then please go spend your money elsewhere, because we don't want your money. Those are just two non-negotiables for us. So if you fit, and that's pretty broad, right? I mean, like,
yeah,
I would think, right? But those are the only two things. Like, those two things are two things that we're not willing to negotiate on. Everything else, you know, whether you are an independent, progressive, centrist Democrat, we're happy to work with you and help you out.
Cool. We hope to hear from you and all of our viewers really soon.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
When's our next live?
Wednesday?
Wednesday,
same time.
Same time.
Wednesday, same time.
Cool.
We just figured that out right now on the spot.
Same place, same time, same channel.
Yep. See you guys. Have a good night.